Hi there. Before we get started today, I wanted to take just a minute to orient us. The purpose of this podcast is for you to have your own experience with whatever topic we're covering. So, in order to offer that to you before we jump in, I want to invite you to consider three questions. The first one is, what do you think about when you consider the word play? Are there memories that come to your mind or maybe emotions that come up for you? Second question is, what is your relationship with play? Third question. If you were to play today, do something that felt fun or in flow, what would that look like for you? What would play look like for you today? All right, I'm excited for you to jump in and listen to Dr. Patty Hohlbein today. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Come Home to You. I am your host, Jenny Swim, and I am so glad you're here with me today. And I'm especially excited to welcome my guest today, Dr. Patricia Hohlbein. I am really excited for you all to experience my conversation with Patty today because we're going to talk about something that I think we forget as we get older. We're good at it when we're little, and that's play. And I think it's one of the few skills that as we get older, we actually get worse at it instead, at least in my experience, instead of actually getting better. And Patty is going to help us understand how we can revitalize this in us, look at how it affects us both professionally and personally, and just really dive into some of her research on play. So before we get started, I want to introduce you to Dr. Patricia Hohlbein so you have a sense of who we're talking to as we jump in here. So Dr. Patricia Hohlbein is the Vice President of Consulting at Atlas Network. She holds a doctorate of education from Pepperdine University in organizational leadership, an MBA with a concentration in applied leadership, a BS in marketing, and a BS in business management from Franklin University. Patty held both business school faculty and senior administrative positions at prominent business schools in the United States. She's been an executive in diverse industries, including healthcare, architecture, design, and planning. And she's a serial entrepreneur. Patty's an expert in organizational leadership, emotional intelligence, and adult learning. In addition to her research and professional work, Dr. Hohlbein currently serves on several philanthropic boards. She lives in Columbus, Ohio with her husband, Pete. They have 4 adult children, 5 grandchildren, and 4 granddogs.
Thanks for the great introduction, Jenny.
Okay, so as we jump in on this topic today, Patty, what does play mean to you? And tell me a little bit about your doctoral research on play, just to kind of level set us about what we're talking about and why play is so valuable.
Yeah, great question, and it's kind of been an interesting journey, right? Of first of all, with like even proposing to do doctoral work that threads in play, kind of like raised a few eyebrows, and in fact, there's like this 100-year body of research around play that has, you know, started through child psychologists, through human development, like all across the spectrum, and it just is very intriguing how that continues to weave through and thread through our life. Now, in spite of all of that research of 100 years long, nobody has really come to an agreement on this is how we define play. So there's no set definition, if you will. It embodies a lot of things. It can be music, daydreaming, art, reading, a walk in nature. It doesn't involve a special set of skills or abilities for anybody to engage in play. And in fact, it's very much the work of our childhood. And then we kind of get it trained out of us as we become adults. So it's an instinct that we need. So when you have like those urges that you want to read, or you want to go for a walk, or you enjoy listening to music, those things that kind of take you away from the everyday, really, those are ways that we're engaging in play. However, as adults, like, we feel better if we call it team building or something else along those lines, because um, it kind of gets a bit of a bad rap, even though it's a healthy part of us as emotional and social beings.
Yeah, I'm actually so curious what they said when you go and you say, I want to do my doctoral research on play. Like when you first told me you did it on play, I'm thinking, you can do that? That sounds like really fun. Only Patty would think about that. But what was that process of even you connecting with why would you want to study play?
Yeah, there's just like things in life's journey that kind of happen at just the right time. And I'm a person of faith, so I really believe these are like God moments that are placed along the way. But whatever your frame is and however you want to call it, I happened to be actually on an airplane, and there was a magazine that had an article in it about play that was by this neuroscientist that was talking about how it's really an important part of our whole human development. And I just have a fascination with how we grow and develop as beings and our social nature and those sort of things. So that kind of started an extra spark in me of, this is such an important thing, and yet it keeps getting pushed down. How can we really elevate the importance of this, of playing across your lifetime? Because it is just such a vital part of health and well-being, which really got illuminated for us during COVID when people didn't have the opportunity to socialize or do other things. Like it created kind of these mental state boxes for ourselves, right? That was very difficult to break out of later. So connecting all that to say, like connecting the dots back to looking at that original article and also being fascinated about emotional intelligence and actually how play and playfulness fuels the development of our emotional intelligence as we grow into adulthood. It's the same set of skills. It just translates into adulthood, more into our personal and our professional relationships.
So, first of all, I'm so fascinated with something that sounds so fun being good for me. I think at
Yeah.
work and at home, we think like, how can I be more productive? How can I have better conversations? We don't usually say, how can I be more playful? So, why would we want to prioritize that, whether we're at home in our personal lives and our professional lives? How does it affect our bodies, our minds, our capacity, our emotional intelligence? What have you found in your research?
So, what I found, and I'm not a medical doctor, but I had the opportunity to actually work with the groundbreaking neuroscientist that I read about initially, his article. He became an advisor then on my dissertation thesis, and we still maintain a friendship today. So he's like my real source of kind of tell me about the biological impacts of things. And when you do an MRI of the brain after you've been sitting for a while, which, by the way, sitting is considered the new smoking. So you see kind of like this very passive kind of state. Whereas if you go and you take a 10-minute walk in nature, or just even outside, like around your block, right? It doesn't have to be this big exploration in the woods kind of thing. It really lights up your whole prefrontal cortex, which is where you're really going to do that deep learning and processing and thinking. So when you think like, I'm just going to power through with writing this article or doing this thing, and you're totally just at a lock, it's so much more beneficial to take a beat and say, I'm going to walk away for 10 minutes and go walk outside. No AirPods, please. And just let your mind relax for a minute, and I promise you when you come back you'll be amazed at how that just kind of unlocks your creativity and a refresh, gives you a little bit of a reset.
No AirPods, huh? So we have to keep our brains open when we play.
Well, I think it gives you a different lens and a different way to kind of explore your world around you. We have so many external sources that are vying for our time and attention, and it takes away some of the benefit of a walk in nature if you mitigate it with listening to music or just flat out just having noise cancellation. Like listen to the birds chirping or the crunch of the leaves under your feet when you take a walk.
Yeah, having that multi-sensory experience, that whole person experience does make a difference for me. I get that
Yeah,
when I
and especially when you're trying to do like that reset, like you need to let yourself have a reset. Um, there's nothing wrong with going for, you like enjoying a long walk and you like listening to your music, have at it. That's great. But if it's like you're really trying to just give your brain a break for a second, actually do it. Like let it happen.
Yeah, so when we like writer's block is what comes to my mind when we sit down and we try to push through something and we just push harder, we get more frustrated and less comes. But it seems like as a culture, we don't think, well, let me go take a beat and go do something fun or play. You talked a little earlier about how we've trained this instinct that play is an instinct, which
Yeah.
we talk about on Come Home to You that our body has intelligence, that somatic intelligence, that we need to listen to that because there's a reason for our instincts.
Yeah.
What does that play? You talked a little bit about the neuroscience and biology of what that play does for us in our bodies. Share a little bit more about what you've seen as you've interacted with people, both professionally and maybe personally, how play shows up as they listen to that instinct, what that does for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's kind of an interesting exercise to do individually as well to kind of say, we call them play histories. Like just think about your journey across your lifetime. We're all going to have different experiences, right? What do you recall from being a very young child, like before school, early elementary, middle school. And then you'll see as we get like, especially middle school in the United States, right? Is that's when things like we don't have recess anymore. We start taking things away. Like you got to get ready for test or whatever. And in fact, like that begins part of that training to say, you know, that was for part of being a kid and you can't be wasting time on play. Like you need to get busy and focus. And in fact, it's not a mutually exclusive thing. They need to be blended together. So I think as we, journey through our lives and consider what are our lived experiences, people who grew up on a farm have definitely a different frame of play than those who grew up in the city and what were their kind of experiences. Or, you know, if everything was orchestrated for you as a kid and you didn't have any time for free play to develop those imagination skills and those kind of things, which is not to say like all is lost if you didn't have this amazing experience in your youth. It's definitely something that you can claim for yourself at any point in your life and just say, I really enjoy these things. And even if you have to go to the extent of like, I'm going to put it on my calendar until I start developing it as a new habit and a part of what my everyday life experience is like. Sometimes we need to calendar things like that because that's where we're starting. So being kind to ourselves and then also picking like, what is it that you really like? You want to learn how to play guitar? Do it. No time like the present.
It was so interesting when you said the phrase wasting time, because I think that's a belief that I know I've had when I go do something that's enjoyable. I'm using the word fun synonymously with play. So let me maybe just pause and say, is that the same thing?
I would say yes. There is an element of fun and even flow. Flow was like the big buzzword 10 or 15 years ago. If you're defining fun as when you're losing track of time and you're really enjoying something, then yes, 100%. I mean, that's kind of um, some of it. You can play and it still has contextual meaning, right? You think about all of the corporations now that have been really trying to build culture. and doing team building things and going out and doing things that are completely different. They don't have an agenda of like, we need to do all these things, but just letting people be together and kind of being curious about each other and having a shared lived experience around something, whether it's, bowling or cooking or whatever. There's a recognition that we're the same person at at our core, at work or at home. Like, we certainly take on different roles, but at our core, like, we're still bringing our same self into that space. So, how do you continue to honor something that is really a core part of being a human and really just interacting with others?
Yeah, going back to the instinct to be our full human self, to let that instinct of play be part of our everyday lives. So, if you are struggling to not have it be a waste of time, right? Like that is a cultural notion, I think at least that I grew up with. Like you can do that after you get the important things done. You can play once your work is done. But what I'm hearing from you is that play is actually a part of our work, that is a part of how we function, how we get to flow, how we have more of that white space in our brain, how we move past blocks, how our bodies operate right, if I'm hearing it correctly. So how do we shift, or how have you seen people kind of shift that mindset from play is a waste of time, or it comes at the end of the day versus this needs to be an integrated part of my life?
I think a lot of that has started to shift. There is just such a significant amount of research now around mental health and healthy living and well-being, and just what we know about neurodevelopment and things is way beyond what we knew even 20 years ago. So I think the body of research is helping give it that credibility push. And also, when people maybe just out of sheer curiosity are like, well, I'm gonna see for myself kind of thing. And then they really see and appreciate the benefits for themselves, then it just becomes, kind of a self-fueling momentum of, wow, I didn't actually believe that that was going to be beneficial for me. And I'm able to enjoy things, and I'm amazingly productive and all of these other things that I want to be. And you're still professional, but being playful doesn't mean like you're the corporate clown. It means like bringing this spirit of curiosity into the space. If I'm just genuinely curious about you, Jenny, then just think about how that starts to create a space and a relationship between you and I that's not around like, well, tell me what you do, what's your job, what's your role. But if I start out a conversation and I say to you, and we're at like a dinner event for work, and I say something to you like, so what do you like to do for fun when you're not here at a work event? It starts off a whole different type of conversation and mindset, and a chance for us to find like similarities and shared passion and excitement beyond knowing that we have the work connection.
It was so interesting as was observing myself, even though you were just giving me an example of that. As soon as you said that, I noticed myself smile and I could feel a little bit energized, like, oh, this is fun. I felt kind of that kind of uptick in energy within me. So, how interesting that I even experienced that just in this kind of role play. So, what are examples of fun? If someone's sitting back thinking, well, I don't know if I'm playful, I don't know if I play, I don't get a chance to talk to people at work, I work from home, I'm remote. What are some ways that we might know that we're actually in play? You mentioned curiosity. Is there anything else?
hmm And I kind of mentioned talking about play histories, and I think this can be kind of a fun exploration for people to do for themselves, is to take some time and say, what do I recall doing? And it's really hard when you're a young child, right? Like before 5 years old, we have very cryptic memories from that time period. But if you happen to remember anything, like what do you remember doing, in kindergarten or whatever? And then as an elementary age child, as middle school, high school, college age, and then starting into adulthood, like what are the things that you enjoy? And there might be a shift from like actual games and sports and things to more like music or theater, or I love animals and I, volunteer at a shelter, or I take my dog for a walk, or whatever or if you have kids that you engage and play with your kids, and that kind of takes you away. So kind of seeing those things for yourself of like, these are the things that I recall and I enjoy. So what would I like to do more of? What do I want to make more space for? And then just kind of starting there, like really, and really being kind to ourselves too. I think we tend to, when we have illuminated something that maybe we haven't focused on, we take that as like a deficit or something we should feel bad about. This is a guilt-free zone. Just claim your space, and what is it that you want to do more of, even if it's saying, I'm going to start taking a 15-minute walk every day just for me. Maybe you take the dog because the dog won't talk. But I think there's just creating that space for yourself and figuring out like what were those things you really did enjoy before and that you gave time to, and maybe you even built lifelong friendships out of some of those particular experiences, right? Of, you know, and you keep adding to that circle of friends. Are there people that you enjoy being with to, you know, let's go to a pottery class or whatever, or just be like you're in a book club. I mean, it there's no right or wrong way to play. Daydreaming is playing too, because you're just kind of letting yourself have some imagination space. Music is like the number one brain activator. So I'll tell you a little secret of kind of what I do with meetings or gatherings is I always have music playing when people enter the room. Generally, it doesn't even matter what kind of music it is, but you think about your own experience when you walk into a room and there's music playing, you're kind of like, "Oh, hey, what what's going on in here? Like what's going to happen? Like this feels different and good," versus if you walk into a room and it's flat, it's just people murmuring, then you kind of you grab that energy for yourself versus like bringing the energy in the room up. A little neuroscience trick, because it does really get your brain activated. It gets your prefrontal cortex fired up for deep learning. So you can't stop yourself from it. Like nobody has that kind of control of their prefrontal cortex. Like, well, I'm not going to be like that. So, I mean, in a good way, like you're not trying to manipulate people, but you're really trying to invite them in. There's a reason we're together for an experience or whatever, if it's something work related, and it doesn't have to be a drag. Like it can have that positive fuel and spark and still be like super serious work.
Hmm. I love that you're saying both can exist together. Sometimes we're very either or in our mind. So I love that play can be part of professionalism and getting things done, being productive. So I'm noting you mentioned for people here, let's look for what we enjoy and our desires, what we want to do. Those two things stuck out for me, that can be a form of play for us.
Yeah.
Any other, as we wind up our time together, any other tips or tricks like the music that we might just add as a little sprinkle, whether in our home life to add more play or in our professional life to add more play?
Yeah, and I would say I think most people by and large do enjoy some sort of music. So that's a really easy one to add in. Like if you're going to have coffee or tea before work starts. Can you turn on some music you enjoy for those 5 or 10 minutes where you're having that coffee, and just kind of create a different space for yourself starting the day. The other thing I would say is like add in, a couple of 10 or 15-minute walk breaks during your work day, like no AirPods, just think of it as like, hey, if we are truly thinking about sitting being the new smoking, think about this being like your break from all of that sitting that is physiologically not good for us either. So it it physically builds health, mentally, emotionally. It just kind of lets you have a good release and kind of flush some of that stress hormone of cortisol out of your system a bit.
How easy is that? Take walks, take 10 to 15-minute breaks throughout the day where you're going on a walk and add some music to your day. And we're already starting to play a little bit more in our
Yeah.
personal or professional lives.
Yeah, and I think, doing that play history for yourself is really important because you can cultivate like those things that are going to flood back great memories and amazing times, and then propel you forward into what's the next version of yourself, because we have so much life in front of us after childhood. Let's get the most out of it and really enjoy it.
Thank you, Patty. I love the idea of going back to our play history in order to even get to know ourselves better, to connect back to that instinct, to bring in all these benefits of play that we didn't even know, that I didn't even know were so easy to have really a part of our life if we would just add those tiny little pieces of what we want to do and what we enjoy.
Yeah,
Really
yeah,
fun. Okay.
absolutely.
So if you're listening to this and thinking, I really love what Dr. Holbein's talking about, I'd love to learn more, I'd love to follow what you're doing, you can connect with Patty on LinkedIn, and I will drop that in the show notes here. And Patty, is there anything else you want to leave us with as we wrap up our time together today?
I would just say, no time like the present. Start changing and embracing some sort of play activity for yourself. It's something that not only do we deserve, but we need to be a part of a complete human experience.
I love that. And one time Patty talked to me about a prescription for play, that we could take that out and then we could say, hey, let's go do something that's fun today that we can enjoy. And I don't think anyone will turn that down.
Right, right. Absolutely. I hope not.
Patty, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to learn from you, and I'm really excited to implement some of these practices into my own life.
Thanks so much for having me on board, Jenny. It was really great to see you and chat with you today.
Thanks for joining me today on Come Home to You. So glad to have you here. And as always, if you found something that was helpful for you on this podcast, please feel free to share it with someone else who might find similar benefit. Until we meet again.